let's talk about ellipses. So part 1 of 3. Here we go. We're going to go over 5 things in this first video, and that's just vocabulary, getting to know the ellipse. All right. First of all, you need to understand standard form. So standard form for an ellipse, I've written it right here in red, so you can take a second to copy it down. It's x minus h quantity squared divided by a squared plus y minus k quantity squared divided by b squared, always equal to 1. All right. Different textbooks will show you differently, but basically with a squared and b squared, I don't want you to worry too much about that. We're going to use that in the next video, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. For right now, you need to worry about the number that is under the x and the numbers under the y. I'll explain shortly. Okay, so you'll notice the standard form here says, for my example, says x plus 2 quantity squared over 9 plus y minus 3 quantity squared over 16 equals 1. So we basically have to match up this equation to this ellipse. The part that might seem a little familiar to you is h and k, right? So for this ellipse, hk, if I look for it, well, my x is what accompanies my h, and my y always accompanies my k. So it looks like my h value is going to be -2. X minus -2 is the same as x plus 2. And for my k value is going to be 3. All right. And if you zip over here to the ellipse, you'll notice that -2, 3 is the center. All right. So we really went over standard form and the center. Okay. All right. Now, understanding the 9 a little bit more in this standard form, you'll notice that this ellipse basically has 2 axes. All right. It's got a horizontal axis and it's got a vertical axis, and every ellipse does. Well, the larger of the 2 axes, we're going to call the major axis. All right. While the smaller one, we're going to call the minor axis. Okay. If your major axis and minor axis are the same dimension, then you've got a circle. Okay. So the major axis here is larger, and you'll notice that it is larger in the vertical direction because the larger number is 16 and it is underneath the y, right? While the x has a 9 underneath it, meaning that the minor axis will be smaller. All right. Now the question is, how much smaller, or what is the actual dimensions of it? So let's see, standard form, major axis, minor axis. This gets us to our vertices. So your major axis, if you notice from the center, it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4 units until it reaches your vertex. All right. And there's another vertex here at the bottom. All right. Your vertices. So your vertices are always along your major axis, and they are 4 units away. Why? Well, the reason that they are 4 units away are, once again, because of this 16. All right. If you look at this carefully and we see that this was a b squared under the y, then to find b, we need to take the square root of 16. The square root of 16 is 4. And that explains why this is 4 units up and 4 units down from the center. So you can imagine, horizontally speaking, if we take the square root of 9, the square root of 9 is 3, which explains why the minor axis extends 3 units to the right and 3 units to the left. All right. So what I do to locate my vertices is I go up 4 units from my center and label that coordinate. Same, 4 units down from the center, and I'll label that coordinate. For my co-vertices, I'm going to go 3 units to the right from the center and label that point, and 3 units to the left for the center to label that point. So that should explain all the basic vocabulary of ellipses, as long as they're in standard form. I want to show you just one last thing, and just so that you make sure, the major axis does not necessarily have to be the vertical one. It just has to be the largest one. So look at what happens as soon as I turn this 9 into a 36. Boom. We have a much wider ellipse. So now my major axis is along the horizontal axis, and that's simply because my larger number, my larger denominator is underneath the horizontal component, or the x component. All right, so those are the basics of ellipses, and I hope that this is helpful for you for your intro activities for ellipses. In the next video, we will explore foci and working a little bit more with a squared and b squared. Okay, so I hope that you learned something from this. Feel free to comment with any questions.